Welcome back. You might not have heard, but April is National Financial Literacy Month. Our money man, Bob Ingram from Ameriprise Financial, is here with some smart money tips to help you improve your financial security. Happy post-tax day to you.
Well, thank you. You too.
Okay, first of all, for people just starting out, maybe they're thinking, okay, now's the time. I want to save my money. What are some tips?
Well, again, whether you're just starting out or trying to maybe dig yourself out of some financial issues you might have had, everybody goes through some tough times. It starts with a good foundation. So some good money habits to build with your day-to-day finances, builds that foundation to start, and fundamentals of what your finances are like day-to-day. So, think about your cash flow, right? Everybody doesn't want to hear the budget. We talk about it a lot, but really, it's just finding where your money is going, making sure where those cash flows are. So it can be as simple as just going through a sample through the month, maybe take a week. A lot of clients that we're trying to work with like to get as much, squeeze as much out of that income as possible. Might take a couple of months out of the year, different times a year, and just track where those spending categories are. The essential expenses, what are those adding up to? What are some of the other more variable expenses? Just to see, to have more control of where your money's going and make better decisions based on that. The other, of course, is, the D word, debt, and looking at how to think about debt. We always talk about paying that down, how to effectively pay it down, highest interest rate first and that. But just having a mentality around debt and the impact debt can have. Think of it as not just that you're paying money back. You borrow today to pay it back later, but it's the cost. What are those borrowing costs, the financing charges that you have? It's twofold. Not only are you paying that money back, but then you have those costs that are coming out of your pocket more than what you've borrowed.
Right.
And that's money that could be working for you. So there's the opportunity cost where those earnings now are not growing for you. You could be saving it. You could be investing it. Instead, you're paying that down.
Right.
Decisions like housing. Usually a big part of one's budget over long periods of time, and having an affordable housing. So making those decisions of what is the right house. If you're buying a house, if you're renting, it's not just, let's say, the mortgage payment, but all the other costs associated with that. And while there's not a perfect answer of how much it should be as one budget, probably 25 to 30%, 35% of total expenses related to that gives you the flexibility to then have money to do other things as well. And then have savings. You want to automate, make it as simple and systematic as possible.
Yeah, you got to make your money work for you. Now, of course, like as you start out, you build, you've got to think long term. So what are the tips for long term?
Well, if you now have the good foundation to build on, you might be saving for things like retirement. And a lot of people, putting money away, doing some good things and building that. But over time, one of the big challenges we find is when people get close to retirement or in retirement, now what does that mean? What is the strategy? What are you working toward? How are you going to distribute that money and create that paycheck in retirement? What accounts do you distribute from? How do you manage taxes? And if you think about it, all that can go back to how you're saving for retirement.
Right.
So it can make a big difference what your ultimate plan is in retirement to decide how do you save for it, if that makes sense. So having that overall plan is key. As you are saving, you want to know what you own. What are you investing in? Doesn't mean you have to be an expert at a high finance degree across the board, but at least know what are the pieces, what are the investment accounts, what are the types of investments you're using and why. If you're working with someone, at least have that strategy in mind. And you mentioned springtime now, or it's April, and you also want to be organized. And it's a great time, especially after that tax time, to go through and always review your documents, important key documents. For emergencies, have an emergency box that has a checklist of your key accounts, contacts, professionals that you're working with. So in a pinch, you can have that, you can get your hands on it and have access to all that information.
Lots of great tips. Money Man Bob, thank you so much. We'll be right back.